Get a notebook and a pen and start preparing your notes from the PPT on civil disobedience movement. Let's look into the PPT. Imagine you are a British official in Delhi in early 1930. Your intelligence report says an old man in a thin cotton shawl is about to walk out of an ashram with a handful of followers, and you are worried. Not because he is carrying a weapon. He is carrying nothing but a walking stick. He is about to break a law about salt, and within weeks, that walk is going to shake the British Empire in India harder than any army could. That old man is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, and today we are going to find out why a pinch of salt became more dangerous to the British than a rifle, and how on one march set off a movement that took India from asking for reforms to demanding complete independence. Let's rewind a couple of years. In 1927, the British sent a commission to India to decide what India's political future should look like. Sounds reasonable, except for one detail. Not a single Indian is on it. Seven Englishmen deciding India's future without asking a single Indian in the room. This is the Simon Commission, and when it lands in India in 1928, it's met everywhere by black flags and crowds shouting, "Simon, go back." The British try to calm things down. Viceroy Irwin makes a vague promise: someday India might get dominion status like Canada or Australia. But someday isn't good enough anymore. A younger, more impatient generation of Congress leaders, Jawaharlal Nehru among them, are done waiting for scraps of self rule. They want the whole thing. So in December 1929, the Congress meets on the banks of the river Ravi in Lahore, and something changes forever. Nehru, now Congress President, moves a resolution that stuns the British establishment. Not dominion status, not partial self rule, but Purn Swaraj, that is, complete independence. Full stop. They pick a date to make it real: 26th January 1930. Across the country, in villages and cities that had never heard each other's names, people gather to raise the flag and recite a pledge of complete independence. Historians considered this moment India stopped negotiating for a better deal and started demanding freedom outright, and the Congress hands the job of turning that pledge into action to one man, Gandhi. Now, here's the part that trips a lot of students up. Why salt? Out of everything the British controlled, why did Gandhi pick something so small? Because it was small, and that was exactly the point. Salt is something every single Indian needs, rich or poor, Hindu or Muslim, city or village, and the British had made it illegal for ordinary people to make their own salt. They taxed it and forced everyone to buy it from the government. So, when Gandhi decided to break that one law, he was not picking a dramatic act of violence. He was picking something every Indian could join in on their own kitchen doorstep. On 12th March 1930, Gandhi sets out from Sabarmati Ashram with 78 companions. Word spreads ahead of him, villagers line the roads, newspapers around the world start covering it like a slow motion earthquake. 24 days and about 390 kilometers later, on the morning of 6th April, Gandhi bends down on the beach at Dandi and picks up a lump of natural salt. It's a quiet gesture, but it's a signal, and all over India, People take it as their cue. Coastal villagers started making salt illegally. People boycott foreign cloth and liquor shops. Government employees hand in their resignations, and something else happens that had never happened at this scale before. Women Sarojini Naidu, Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, and thousands of ordinary women step into the front lines of the protest. The British respond with mass arrests, more than 60,000 people, and in May they arrest Gandhi himself. But the movement does not stop. If anything, jailing the leader makes the whole country angrier. By early 1931, both sides are exhausted, and Viceroy Irwin does something unusual for a colonial ruler. He actually sits down and negotiates with Gandhi as an equal. The result in 1931 March is the Gandhi-Irwin Pact. Gandhi agrees to call off civil disobedience and attends talks in London. In exchange, the government releases political prisoners and lets coastal villagers make salt for their own use again. So Gandhi sails to London for the second round table conference. The sole voice representing the entire Indian National Congress in a room full of British officials, princes, and rival Indian factions. And it goes almost nowhere. The talks get stuck on how to represent religious minorities. Nobody can agree on what a federal India should even look like, and Gandhi comes home in December 1931 with nothing solid to show for it. Here's what a lot of students lose the thread, so pay attention to this part. The movement does not just restart because Gandhi feels like it. It restarts because the British, sensing weakness in Congress after the failed conference, strike first. Lord Wellington's government arrests Nehru and other Congress leaders before Gandhi even lands back in India, and then bans the Congress party outright. Think about that from Gandhi's side. He negotiated in good faith, got nothing, and came home to find his own party declared illegal and its leaders in jail. What choice does he have? In January 1932, he relaunches the civil disobedience movement. This second phase is met with even harsher repression than the first, and by 1934, with the movement losing momentum under the crackdown, it's formally withdrawn. So, why does this whole sequence matter for your exam? And honestly, for understanding modern India? Because this is the moment the freedom struggle changes character. It stops being led only from the top by lawyers, politicians in council chambers, and becomes something ordinary people like farmers, women, and students could join with their own hands on their own doorstep. A pinch of salt picked up on a beach taught an empire that it could not out-negotiate a movement that had already made freedom personal for millions of people. That's the civil disobedience movement, from a boycotted commission to a pledge on the river Ravi banks to a walk to the sea to a handshake that did not hold and finally to a renewed flight. In the next video, we will look at how this movement set the stage for final phase of the freedom struggle. If this helped, hit subscribe and drop your question about Gandhi-Irwin Pact in the comments, because that's the part most exams love to test.